So we can officially start the videos going. Welcome to the April Beaches Watch community meeting. This is always exciting to hear what our elected officials did or didn't do or wanted to do and still trying to do. I'm Maria Mark, I'm president of Beaches Watch, and I'll be hosting the meeting tonight. So again, welcome. Just a few announcements before we get started with our program. So we always videotape our meetings, so if your friends or neighbors were not able to join us, you can share this hyperlink with them. It's always going to be on our YouTube channel, Beaches Watch 2012. We are a member-based organization, so we're always looking for memberships, either to renew or to renew your membership. It's $15 for individual, $20 for family, and $5 for students. Your membership runs from January through December, so calendar, so you can either join or renew now with our ladies who are sitting at the table at the front door, or you can go online at beacheswatch.com. We always like to recognize our elected officials. So we have Sandy Golding, who is the Vice Mayor of Jacks Beach. We have Carrie Chin, who is, aren't you Vice Mayor? Yeah. Of Neptune Beach. Jessica Ream, who is a City Commissioner at Atlantic Beach. And we have Greg Sutton, who is Jacks Beach City Council, Jacks Beach. And last but not least, we have Candace Kelly, who is a Commissioner at Atlantic Beach, and she wanted to, a nanosecond, to say something.
As you can see, I may not be able to stay for the whole meeting. So I just want to say I have a personal vested interest in the future of ABE, and as a commission, we'll do what we can.
Thank you. Okay, just a few events that are going on around the beaches. We have Beaches Go Green, Earth Day, Community Cleanup, which will be Saturday, April 20th from 9 to 11. They'll also be hosting, I guess, a Yoga for Change from 8 a.m. to 8:45 a.m., so bring your yoga mat. There'll be two locations hosting this, one at Atlantic Boulevard Beach Access and the Jacks Beach Pier. The Atlantic Beach Charter Review Committee will meet again on Wednesday, April 24th at 6 p.m., and that will be in the chambers. We have our annual 2024 Sandcastle contest, and that will be held Saturday, April 27th from 2:30 to 5:30. The location will be north of the Jacksonville Beach Pier, so that's always fun. It's amazing the artistic work that they do with this with sand, right? Our opening of the Beaches Parade, that's going to be held Sunday, April 28th at 2 p.m., and that will be in downtown Jacksonville Beach. So, save the date, Wednesday, May 1st at 7 p.m. That's our next meeting. What to expect with our beach renourishment that's coming up. So we'll have Kevin Bodge, Olson Associates Coastal Engineer, formerly with the U.S. Army. Wasn't he with the Army Corps? No, he wasn't. He works for it. And Jason Harab for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And that will be here in the library. It starts at 7 p.m. Just a quick show of hands. We'd kind of like to know how you know about our meeting. So, how did you hear about tonight's meeting? Nextdoor, the app. Anyone familiar with that? No? Okay. Facebook. 1, 2, 3, Facebook. Newsletter. Everybody should get our newsletter. Oh, great. Okay, that's being effective. You're actually reading our newsletter. Newspaper. Beaches Leader usually prints our press release. Anything Beaches Leader? No? Okay. Just our website generally. Just wanted to go see what's going on. Thank you. Thank you. And just by friends, word of mouth. Awesome. Okay, so we're being talked about. Good deal. So, end of the announcements unless there's anything else from the crowd? No? Okay. So we'll go ahead and get into our program. Tonight we're going to hear about the good and the bad of our 2024 legislative session. We have our guest speakers, Mike Staffopoulos. I've been practicing that all day. Staffopoulos. Jacksonville Beach City Manager. Accompanying him will be Sandy Golding, who is our Jacksonville Beach Vice Mayor, followed by, we have these kind of in not the same order. So Richard Pike will follow them, and he is now the Neptune Beach City Manager. And then we'll bring the icing on the cake with Bill Killingsworth, who is the Atlantic Beach City Manager. So I will.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you. The Florida legislative session, which lasts 60 days, is probably the 2 months of the year that every municipal administrator hates because you have no idea what's going to be brought up during the 60 days, what's a priority for the local representatives that are in Tallahassee for those 60 days, and what the politics are behind their positions. And sometimes, as we'll see when we go through some of these slides, there's always that curveball that comes out of nowhere that no one even saw coming. If you saw in the news the other day, you can now buy Nebuchadnezzar-sized bottles of wine. 15-liter bottles. Didn't know that was important, but clearly somebody had a project they wanted to get passed on that. So, So this just gives you an idea of how much chaos there is to try and track and read and follow and potentially lobby for or against during the course of those 60 days. Over 1,900 bills were actually filed in a combination of both the House and the Senate. 325 bills ended up passing through both chambers, and the state ended up adopting a budget in excess of $117 billion. The bigger thing to focus on is those 1,900 bills. We have representatives that work with us at the level in Tallahassee to give us the heads up on the ones that will have a direct impact on local government. Those are the ones we try to focus on as we go throughout the year. And the first one that we're going to talk about is one that has literally been on the radar for 10 years, and it's brought up every year, is vacation rentals. So I'm going to turn that over to Sandy since she was the bulldog competition.
So, good evening, everyone. Vacation rentals. Now, I know some of you live in Atlantic Beach, and some of you live in Neptune Beach, and then some of you live in Jacks Beach. For those of you who live in Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach, you can celebrate, right? For those of us who live in Jacks Beach, we have to worry about this bill. And so this is what passed this year. Now, in years past, for the past 10 years, the legislature's been trying to pass something. And it's never gotten through the legislature. This year, it got through the legislature. Why? Because Senate President Pasadomo said, I'm tired of dealing with this. I think we need to push something through and close the chapter on this and move on. Well, we don't agree. Jacks Beach doesn't agree. And other cities don't either, because basically what the bill is doing, you can see it maintains the grandfathering for Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach, which is great. Jacks Beach didn't have that. So ordinance, a registration ordinance, back in 2019 to try to help us manage some of the things that we could try to manage. And there were other cities that did the same thing. And that we were given that authority in 2014 by the state to do that. And now this legislation is taking that away from us. And it's basically saying that you can't have your own registration ordinance. All you can do are these specific things, and that's it. We're not happy about that. One of the other things it does as well is it exempts Flagler County. Why Flagler County? The House Speaker is from Flagler County. And so, anyway, the other things that we don't like about the bill is that it allows vacation rentals to begin operation before having any kind of inspection and doesn't even require an inspection. Now, how many hotels and other public lodging establishments in Florida have to go through inspections? All of them. So why would we not require that at vacation rentals? So that's problematic. Also, let's see, I'm losing my place here. It does put some requirements on the registration platforms, or the advertising platforms, I should say, and requires them to pull the vacation rental off of their advertising platform if the vacation rental is, if the registration is revoked by the local government or by the state. One of the other things I meant to mention is that the bill does allow us to revoke their registration, which is not something that we can do at this point. That's one of the good things. We can also fine them if they don't register. We can fine them $500 for not registering, which is something we can't do right now, but that's a good thing as well. But again, taking away our ability to have a registration ordinance, because we're the ones that are dealing with all the issues locally, not the state. People aren't calling DBPR when there's a problem, they're calling the cities, and we need the ability to be able to manage that. The other thing it does is it does provide some new state requirements as well, and funds 9 employees for the state to implement this program. I've taken the lead with the Florida, well, not with the Florida League of Cities, but I worked with the Florida League of Cities, got a list of all the other cities in the state of Florida that have registration ordinances, and I sent out an action alert to them. 45 other cities we've been able to identify so far, and those cities are sending veto letters to the governor. We are urging citizens to do the same and to tell the governor, here's why we are asking you to veto this bill. We're hopeful that the governor would veto the bill. Our legislators, we have Rep. Michael and Senator Yarborough both voted against the bill. So if you have the opportunity, please thank them for voting against the bill. Rep. Michael has continued to do what she can. She's talked to the governor, and she's continuing to do what she can to try to push for a veto. So we're hopeful that it can happen. There are other people, other entities that are opposing the bill as well, and then there are a few entities that are supporting it. So it hasn't gone to the governor's desk yet, so we still have time to flood his office with emails. Here's the email address for the governor. Would encourage you to email him if you could. The next item that was passed, this one kind of came out of the blue. We really didn't know that this one was going on, but the release of balloons was passed, and basically what this does is and I believe Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach both have ordinances about the release of balloons. And so basically what this does is it says that you cannot intentionally release any balloons. State law used to say 10 balloons, up to 10 balloons in a 24-hour period. Now this takes away that restriction and says you cannot intentionally release any balloons. It also removes the exemption for biodegradable balloons, which was allowed at one point. And the penalties are non-criminal, and they put an exception, and it does not apply to anyone under 6 years of age. Okay. I'm glad that really. All right. Is this reverse?
Another one that came out of left field, total curveball. It feels like it came out in the last week, went through all committees in the last week, and got approved in the last week. This one, rumor has it traces back to the governor, basically indicating that we would not let cities in Florida turn into cities on the west coast of the U.S. where homeless camps have set up on streets in front of businesses, in public parks, etc., and cause problems for the residents and business owners in those communities. So this piece of legislation, known as the unauthorized camping and sleeping, it basically says a local government cannot allow individuals to set up campsites in public locations. That includes the public right-of-way, which are our roadway corridors. It includes parcels such as parks. It includes other properties that are under our control. It takes it one step further. It says if they are doing this and they do it with consistency and people make complaints to the city must address it within 5 days. And if we don't address it, we can be held responsible. We can actually have suit brought against us by either the individual, the business, or the Attorney General can take action against us. The follow-up to all of this is that they are trying to make counties more responsible for providing homeless shelters and or homeless facilities in order to address the issue of homelessness. You can set up a campsite anywhere within a county, but it must be initiated by the county and either supported by the local government agency that is being set up within or approved by the county that is being set up within. And the state has some requirements. That temporary camping facility can't be set up for more than 1 year, must meet minimum standards with regards to potable water, sanitary sewer, and behavioral and mental health counseling services on site. So all of that is to say that this is going to have a profound impact. We are still analyzing the legislation. We're going to be having conversations with our two neighbors to the North Atlantic and Neptune Beach. The end result of this will be, as people are found sleeping in public locations, our police departments will likely arrest them and take them to the county sheriff. And then TK Waters is going to have to figure out what to do with them. And this is going to happen all throughout Duval County. So this one is going to be very unique. We're not exactly sure how it's going to play out. Again, brand new legislation, never been on the books before. And I think a lot of counties and cities are going to fumble their way through this first year of implementation.
Okay, the next one is the Live Local Act. This was brought up for those of you who were at the meeting in February with Scott Dudley, and he was talking to us about, okay, here's legislation that's coming that you need to be aware of. The Live Local Act was passed last year. This was also a Senator Passidomo priority for affordable housing. And it was one of those that had never been seen before, was pushed through last year, and now they're going back with this glitch bill to try and clean up some things that needed to be addressed. For us, I think the biggest concern has to do with height and what can be allowed with height. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a quick summary about what was passed last year, it requires local authorization for affordable housing, as long as the housing is proposed for commercial, multi-use, or mixed use, or industrial properties. The city can't stop it. But it also has to have 40% of the development has to be affordable, according to Florida statutes, and has to be affordable for 30 years. The city can't have public hearings for the height or zoning or density, and if it's a mixed-use development, 65% of it has to be residential. Also, in the glitch bill, it comes back and says that the local government can't restrict density, floor area ratio, or height. The height was already in there, but it modifies the height a little bit. And this, what it does now is it says, and just for clarification, because I think Scott kind of left this with, some people were a little bit concerned with some things that Scott had said. With the height piece of it, I wanted to read exactly what it says. A municipality may not restrict the height of a proposed development below the highest currently allowed height located in its jurisdiction within 1 mile. So I know there were some concerns because Pelican Point in Jack's Beach is, what, 17 stories? And Neptune Beach residents are like, okay, could the Live Local Act allow a 17-story building in Neptune Beach? The way we read it, that's not the way. And last year there was a big push to make sure that in its jurisdiction was part of that. So, but then it also says within 1 mile of the proposed development or 3 stories, whichever is higher. But again, with Jack's Beach, if we go and look at it, it says highest currently allowed height. So our highest currently allowed height in Jack's Beach is 35 feet. Same for Neptune Beach, same for Atlantic Beach. So we believe that we're okay there. But there were some things that were added that could be concerning, I think. It's kind of confusing, but it says if the proposed development is adjacent to, on 2 or more sides, a parcel zoned for single-family residential use that's within a single-family residential development with at least 25 contiguous single-family homes, the municipality may restrict the height of the proposed development to 150% of the tallest building on any property adjacent to the proposed development. So if you have a 35-foot high building that's adjacent to the proposed development, then that seems to be saying that a 52-foot building could be built, regardless of what our charters say. So this is something that's concerning, that kind of surprised us, I would say. Let's see. Also, all right, so that's the 150%. Also, it requires reduction in parking standards. So if the proposed development is within half a mile of a major transportation hub, then the municipality must reduce the parking requirements at least 20%. There's another caveat. If the proposed development has available parking within 600 feet of the proposed development, which could be on-street parking, parking lots, or parking garages that's available for use by the residents, then the municipality has to reduce the parking by 20%. This was something that Mike had discovered, and it allows, with the 30-year affordable housing requirement, after 30 years, that development would become non-conforming because it's no longer.
It used to be 10 years, though. The state legislation is only going to be good. The state legislation is only going to be good for a 10-year period. Most financing done on development projects is in excess of 10 years. It's usually a 20 or 30-year borrowing or bond issuance. So a concern that needed to be addressed in the glitch bill is that if anything were to happen to the property after the 10-year window, that property is technically non-conforming. So you would have a building that you couldn't get insurance on because you couldn't rebuild it to the standards upon which it was built. So they did end up putting the 30-year requirement in for the affordable housing component and made it that it's conforming regardless of the legislation going away in 10 years.
And then one other thing it did is it mandates property appraiser exemptions. 75% of the assessed value of the units in the multifamily projects can be exempt. And ad valorem taxes on the multifamily projects that meet the requirements of the Act can also be, I think it's totally exempt from ad valorem taxes. So quite a few things that this bill did, but the most important, I think, to us has to do with the height piece. Anyway, so that remains to be seen how that's going to play out for us. All right, this next one is Senate Bill 1628. Last year, the legislature passed Senate Bill 170, which was actually advertised as the preemption to end all preemptions. Well, they're still preempting this year. So they came back, and basically what this was requiring is that cities have to now do a business impact statement for any ordinances that are, let's see, any ordinances that, except for those that are required by the federal or state law, issuance of refinancing or debt, adoption or amendment of budgets, things like that are exempted, but emergency ordinances, procurement, development orders, and development agreements. But then this year they came, and last year there was a big push to try to exempt comp plans, land development code changes. This year they came back and they said, we are going to include comp plan amendments and land development changes, except for those that are initiated by somebody other than the municipality. So that's really kind of, we don't understand why.
The next one we have is Senate Bill 812, expedited approval of residential building permits. I just found out that Mr. Killingsworth is prepared to take responsibility for why this one passed at the state level, because it actually is something that Jacksonville had been doing. And to be honest, we're not sure of the applicability here at the beaches based on some of the criteria. But basically, this was the state's attempt to try and alleviate the shortage of housing stock in the state of Florida by expediting developments across the state. And the way that they wanted to expedite it was by allowing developers to start their developments, particularly of subdivisions, by saying once you get to that preliminary plat phase, you can go ahead and actually start building your infrastructure and putting up houses. You just can't actually close on any of the properties or get issued your certificates of occupancy until you get through the final plat process, which creates all those individual home sites of records. So some of the things that jump out at us is for counties over 100,000, of which Newald is, for cities over 10,000, of which Atlantic Beach and Jacks Beach are, but 25 acres of contiguous agricultural land for residential development. If you have those conditions, you must create a program to expedite permitting processes associated with these developments. So the other thing that it talks about is if the developer is going to start the construction before they get final plat, they do actually have to get a bond for 130% of the necessary improvements. For those of you that don't know, when a new subdivision is being built, the developer is responsible for building the roads and all of the utilities underneath those roads. If they start construction and create those new rights-of-way, but they do not finish the construction, if the right-of-way is already platted, that becomes the responsibility of the local government to finish. So they're basically required to get a bond for 130% of the total value, so that if something happens during construction, the local government can come in and finish the project and not be financially burdened by it. And again, the big one, even though they may have new parcels that they're creating and houses that they're building, they can't get a certificate of occupancy and they cannot transfer it to a new owner until they go through that final plat process approved by the city council. Next item that we have is building regulations, House Bill 267. This is one that again is intended to make it easier for homeowners and commercial business owners to do things quicker through local government agencies. And what it does is it affects the replacements of windows, doors, garage doors. You're no longer required to get sealed drawings from an architect or engineer to submit to the building department. Basically, if they submit the documents from the manufacturer and it meets all the requirements in state statute, the permit must be issued, and we have to do it within a certain time frame. The other thing that it does is it actually puts some responsibility back on the architect or engineer when they do sign and seal drawings. A lot of times, drawings will come in, they're signed and sealed by an architect or engineer, and we say, well, we have to do this thorough, detailed review. They're basically saying, we now have to release a permit within 10 days, and if we don't, we have to put in writing why what they've done has violated a section of code. Every architect and engineer that practices in the state of Florida is required to have professional liability insurance, so they are taking on a big burden of the responsibility if something is wrong with the drawings that they've put together for your home or for your commercial property, and they submit it into the locality for review. Some of the big things that it does is it addresses all of the time frames for permit reviews and basically adjusts them. If anything, it shortens them a little bit. But basically, there are 30-day, 60-day, 12-day, and 10-day time frames, and some 5-day time frames that are now in play for certain types of buildings. So all the building officials and building review processes are going to have to conform to these new requirements to make sure that we meet them, because if we don't review and issue notice within that time frame, then the application is presumed good to go and the contractor can start their work. So it'll put a little bit more pressure on local government to do those reviews. The next item we have is public works projects. This one, again, we kind of scratched our heads when we saw it and we said, how applicable is this to local governments? But it actually does have some applicability to us with regards to bidding construction projects. It redefines what a public works project is, and it excludes incidentals to the project. Things like security, janitorial services, landscaping, maintenance, those are no longer considered part of a public works project. But more importantly, a local jurisdiction, whether it's a city or a county, cannot prohibit a firm from bidding on a project if there's more than one funding source from outside of the city to pay for that project. Only if you are the sole funder of the project can you exclude people from bidding on it. I don't think that's an issue for us, but it basically means that anyone can bid, and the criteria that local jurisdictions can use, one of those criteria can be past experience with that contractor for the performance of work. Next item we have is unsafe structures, Senate Bill 1526. This is another one that, again, we're not sure how many properties would technically be affected by the 3 jurisdictions, but it's good to cover anyways. It basically says if there is a structure or building on a property in which all or a portion is seaward of the coastal construction line and the structure is non-conforming, determined unsafe for the BO, or ordered to be demolished by local government, then this would kick in. More specifically, what it means is we can't prohibit the demolition of that property. The property can be demolished and be rebuilt by the local owner of that property. And that's the big note I've got here, is that the local government must not hinder the development or redevelopment of that site. We can't restrict, prohibit, prevent demolition of those structures. There are some very unique exemptions to it, one of them being listed on the National Historic Register before January 1st of 2000, etc. So again, not sure it's going to affect any of us, but we may end up with 1 or 2 of those in future years that we have to deal with. This next one, employment regs, House Bill 433. This is very unique, and I guess a lot of this legislation that passes is in reaction to what some jurisdictions try to do across the state during the course of the year. This one in particular starts off with talking about heat exposure protocols. It basically says a local government or a county government cannot dictate heat control or heat exposure protocols to contractors performing work for the city or the county. So if we hire a landscape company to come in and mow all of the grass in our parks, we cannot mandate that they give their employees 10-minute breaks every 2 hours in order to get out of the heat and hydrate. The reason for that is the way this legislation was written, they are relying on OSHA to develop a heat exposure standard that would be applicable nationwide. If OSHA does not do it by a date certain, then the state will actually take on the burden and create that standard for the state of Florida. But they don't want jurisdictions across the state creating a piecemeal framework of what is appropriate or inappropriate for how employees should be treated out there. We can still set our own standards for our own employees. If we have our own parks employees that are out in the heat, we can say, we're going to give you that 10-minute break every 90 minutes of work or whatever the case might be, depending on the heat for the day. But we cannot mandate it to private providers. The other thing we can't do is we can't use it as a criteria in selecting contracts for the performance of work for our jurisdictions. We can't say, give us a price, and oh, by the way, tell us what your heat exposure protocols are, because we'll evaluate it and judge it based on how you're treating your employees. They also don't want us affecting the wages for employment and benefits of vendors that are doing work for us. We cannot mandate that you pay your employees a certain minimum wage in order to perform work for us. All of that is already locked in with state standards and federal standards. They don't want us creating our own. And the last thing is they don't want us to regulate scheduling by a private employer except as required by the state or federal law. To be honest, I don't know what that means. The only thing I can think of, if you've seen it, is the Chick-fil-A issue in upstate New York, where everyone knows Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays. And Chick-fil-A got a contract to be open on the New York State Turnpike from Albany all the way out to Buffalo. And New York threw a hissy fit because they said, well, when people stop to get gas at a rest area, they can't get any food at Chick-fil-A. So they passed a law saying we mandate that all restaurants that get a contract through the state must be open 7 days a week. And they're basically telling us as a local jurisdiction, we cannot do that. We cannot tell people how to schedule their work. That's all the stuff on wages that we just talked about, and the competitiveness that we can't do, and the heat exposure and wages can't be used as criteria. It goes into effect on September of 2026. That's the time frame, again, that they expect OSHA or the state will have put a protocol in place in order to address this issue. And now we go to homestead. Yes, homestead exemption. This goes through a unique process. You'll see it has HJR at the top. It's a joint resolution. Both the House and the Senate work on this jointly, and it moves forward as such. This one will actually be proposed on the ballot in November as a constitutional amendment that all the residents of the state will get to vote on. What it would basically do is index the homestead exemption that people enjoy for their primary residence. They would tie it to the CPI annually with an adjustment. So as the CPI increases, the homestead exemption would increase with it. Uniquely, it's applicable to the second exemption. For those of you that track your homestead exemption, it's actually in brackets. The first is the 0 to 25,000, then 25 to 50 is not exempted, and then 50 to 75 is that second bracket of exemption. This would be applicable specifically to the second bracket of $50,000 to $75,000 of exemption on your property. And again, it's a future constitutional issue that all of you get to vote on in November. The next two that we have to talk about are ones that failed, and we just thought it would be important for you to know about them. The first one is business taxes. There are a lot of jurisdictions around the state that use what's called LBTR, local business tax receipt, that they issue to every business on an annual basis to be licensed to perform work within your jurisdiction. Those fees typically go into the general fund, or they're allocated towards very specific services within your governmental agency. There was a proposal to eliminate the business tax receipt from being in existence. That would have removed money from the coffers that are paid directly by businesses, and that cost burden would have shifted to the general fund to everyone that pays property taxes. So it did not pass, it did not move forward. For Jack's Beach, that is a revenue of approximately $300,000 a year that is by businesses specifically, and anytime they eliminate a funding source, that gets redistributed amongst all property taxpayers within the jurisdiction. And the next one is Sands.
The business tax one is one we hope does not come back, but we have no guarantees that it won't come back. The millage rate bill, and I'll just touch on this one really quickly. We're not really sure why this was so important, but Garrison was proposing this one because he wanted it to require a 2/3 vote of the local government to increase the millage rate from the previous year. And as I think all of our cities, we approve our millage rates with a simple majority, but the state already has in statute requirements that if your millage rate increase is at a certain threshold, then it is it would require a 2/3 vote. Or if it's above that threshold, it would require a unanimous vote. But this was saying, well, regardless of the threshold, we want you to approve your millage rate increase with a 2/3 vote, unless it does get into that higher threshold, and then it said, okay, but the state law would apply in that case. Again, it didn't pass, so, ultimately, I'll be honest with you, I don't know about Atlantic Beach or Neptune Beach, but for the most part, Jack's Beach, we do a lot of prep in advance, and we spend a lot of time looking at our budget. By the time we get to the point where we're approving our millage rate, our city council usually approves it unanimously. So I'm not really sure why this was so important, but anyway, just wanted to share it with you because it may come back. So that's it for us right now, and then I think questions probably we'll do after everybody's done. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Richard Pike, City Manager at Neptune Beach. This evening, I am going to talk to you about Senate Bill number 64, Reclaimed Water. Basically, this Senate bill is to eliminate the process of placing treated wastewater into our water systems. As of right now, the City of Neptune Beach, once the water is treated, it is discharged into the intercoastal waterway. There are strict regulations, of course, that what condition the water can be in before it can be discharged. But like I said, Florida statute 403.64064 requires wastewater utilities to eliminate non-beneficial surface water discharge. And also, the legislature also recognizes that potable water could be in short supply with the use of the constant pumping and no return. This is going to drive communities to have to redo their possible solution to this is irrigation, using basically the purple reclaimed water system through the city, which would be very expensive and probably not cheap for Neptune Beach. Or this also will require that the disposal of treated wastewater be prohibited from going into any surface water on January of 2032. Current plan, the City of Neptune Beach has submitted a plan to the FDEP to use the deep injection well. As you can see here, the deep injection well, it does actually not pump water, but it injects the treated wastewater down below the aquifer where the hot water is. And you can see that diagram right there. And, One of the other options, again, is retrofitting neighborhoods to accommodate irrigation water. So that's basically one of the two choices that we're dealing with here. And the impact to the rates in the budget, estimated cost to the city of Neptune Beach on the deep injection well, the purchase of the well is $8 to $10 million. That's just to purchase it. For the engineering and construction of the well is $14 million total. In Neptune Beach right now, our public works facilities, we do not have room to put the construction and the drilling of the well and the well on the property. So we would have to move it to another city-owned property and then have the infrastructure from the plant to the well for the water to the reclaimed or the treated wastewater to be pumped back down into the aquifer. So that's basically where we're at with that. And this is not just for Neptune Beach, it's for hundreds of municipalities around Florida. We're going to have to deal with this also. Right here is the proposed relief. This would, for a municipality that brings in for their wastewater and freshwater enterprise fund, brings in less than $10 million. You're looking for relief on that, where if your system is not, if your city is not bringing in more than $10 million, you can get relief from this. So it would affect larger municipalities. And then the extension of 5 years, if you have a plan, one of the others, like if you are planning to put a deep injection well in, you can also request a 5-year extension to give you additional time for the funds and the construction of it. And then the other one is if your city goes to a committed project for conserving portable water. And the Florida Rural Water Association lobbied this year with the legislature for some relief and for them to try to reevaluate the impact that this is going to have on hundreds of municipalities across the state. They did not have any luck with that this year. However, it clearly shows that they are going to be, next year they're going to be added trying to get some relief. So that's basically where we're at with Senate Bill 64. It is coming right now. Hopefully we will get some relief. And if it's not, then there's going to be some tough decisions made on how to finance this and what direction in the future. I wanted to go over some stormwater project we have going on real quick. If you'll see, of course, to the north, Atlantic Beach, the Atlantic Ocean, and Jacks Beach. Right there on Atlantic Beach, the Atlantic Beach Aquatic Gardens, stormwater improvement dumps right in there to Hopkins Creek under Atlantic Boulevard, and ends up coming out in Hopkins Creek in the Intercoastal Waterway. Jacks Beach back in 2020 did with the FDOT and Jacks Beach improvement on A1A to try to get some of that water out. But that water comes out and goes around and goes behind Fletcher and back out to the Hopkins Creek. This is not a dig at our sister cities who we dearly love. This whole program was built by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the 30s for that reason, to get the rainwater off the beaches. And this is where it comes out. We've got a new bridge right there, the Kings Road Bridge. It's been constructed, but we have two obstacles there. Florida Boulevard is owned by the county, and we have Forest Avenue. They both have culverts, which are outdated and too small to move the water. So the water is now backing up to what you see here. And as more water comes in, this area, what the Army Corps of Engineers can do it, but now our culverts are so low and partially plugged up that the water's backing up here on these two areas. So we have talked to the city of Jacksonville, and they have agreed to pay for a new culvert on Florida Boulevard with a tune of about $7 million. But a larger, it would be more like a regular bridge, a small bridge, but the culverts would be bigger and to move that water through. But you still have the obstacle at Forest. So basically, our argument was there's no reason to do one without doing the other because you're not going to accomplish anything. So they agreed to do Forest Avenue as well. So there's an additional $7 million that the COJ is going to put towards this project to move that water off. Our studies show after the culverts have been completed, that the water will flow exactly like it's supposed to. It's supposed to come to Hopkins Creek and right out to the intercoastal waterway under the Kings Road Bridge. So that will help in the future and now, but obviously we are dealing with an issue now. There you see the choke points right there, Florida Boulevard and Forest Avenue, and like I said, those two culverts will be replaced. I think construction is supposed to start in 12 to 18 months. We also have 2 more projects from the legislature. We got $500,000 this year with the help of Representative Michael and Senator Yarborough. We were able to get $500,000 to start replacing the culverts at Bay Street and right there just by Bay and 3rd going into Jarvis Park. And then Davis right there behind Fletcher, which ultimately goes into Hopkins Creek for drainage. So some of the things we have going on right now in Neptune Beach, and this is one more thing here that I know we're limited on time. I'm going to say 2 things. Number 1, the city of Neptune Beach is not going broke, despite what was on social media, not going broke paying for the logo. The logo was free. The contractor was 3 or 4 months behind, so in exchange for that inconvenience, he's not charging the city of Neptune Beach, but that logo on the east side and the city seal on the west side. So, and just real quick, 25 years ago when I was a younger police officer patrolling the streets of Neptune Beach, they were rehabbing the water tower, and I had that idea 25 years ago. That would be the perfect place to put this as Fletcher Country. Well, 25 years now, I'm the city manager, and we got it with the support of Vice Mayor is one of our supporters with this, and the council agreed to do this. So I was very happy to see that. That's being painted now. We put it out today because it is partially painted. We can throw it out what it is, so people can see that this is what's coming. And they'll start in a few days on the city seal that's on the east side. So we're going to have a grand opening and a ribbon cutting of that coming up at the end of the month, right before the all Fletcher reunion. So that'll be coming out. But thank you.
Okay, finally some good news, I think, right? Okay, and now we'll have Bill Killingsworth from Atlantic Beach. He did not have a presentation yet. So would you like to just have a microphone?
Good evening. She's shooting. Is it working?
What are you hearing?
So I just want to talk about a couple things because Mike hit all the big bills that are affecting local government. But in terms of the homestead exemption, one of the key pieces that's there is the fact that it's tied to the CPI on the way up. On the way down, it stays where it's at. So it can only go up regardless of what your property values do. And this is another situation, so I might get in trouble for this, but I think there's been this war on cities for a while now in this state. And we continue to get unfunded mandates while at the same time restrictions on how we can generate revenue. And we're seeing it over and over again in each legislative session. There are 2, I don't want to take credit for it because I don't want to be blamed for it. But there are 2 things that entered the legislative session this time that are directly a result of either conversations I had or actions I took when I was at the city of Jacksonville. The first one is the grandfathering clause to Live Local. So when Live Local first passed, I had a large apartment community developer come talk to me about implementing Live Local. And they had grand plans, which I will say they did not do that whole year. My suspicion is they will implement it now. And they walked me through their plans, and I asked one question. who's going to invest in your capital stack? And they looked at me and went, what do you mean? And I said, I wouldn't invest in your capital stack. Why not? Well, what's your build out? I mean, an apartment community is typically, it's a 5-year build out, including lease up, and then they flip the property to an institutional investment. I said, you're going to come year 5, try to flip the property, and then somebody in the capital stack is going to figure out that it's a non-conforming use. And you're not going to be able to flip the property. And as somebody investing in your capital stack, I lose if you can't flip the property. And then the lights went on. And so I know the individual who went and pushed that with this legislature because it was a fatal flaw in the program. For Atlantic Beach, under the old live local, I wasn't really concerned because the language in the bill is allowed height. And while we have one ocean, sea turtle, is what I work with it as, that's not, I would argue, under our land development regulations, that is not allowed height. Just like you guys, the height's 35 feet, that's our allowed height. But this provision, which I think the intent was, I would like to think that the intent was, if you're going to build an affordable project and you're bounded on 2 sides, you could do 150 feet, 150% of the tallest of those structures, which still might violate the charter, but the way it's written in my recollection is it's 150% of the tallest structure within a quarter mile, which is absolutely crazy. So you might have a situation where you have a 60-foot structure a quarter of a mile away, and then you have 2 residential single-story homes, and now they can go 150% of 60 feet, which is crazy, and I don't think that's the intent. I'm going to vent a little bit. The other fundamental flaw, so I'm going to vent a lot actually. The fundamental flaw with the whole live local from a perspective of developing affordable housing is the definition the state chose to use for affordable housing, which is 120% of median income, which is the top range of workforce housing. Typically, those of us in the profession don't consider it affordable unless it's 80% or lower. The beaches probably, and I haven't looked yet, the beaches may be an exception, but I can tell you when Live Local passed, 120% of the median income for a family of 4 was market rate housing in Jacksonville. So basically you can build an apartment complex in Jacksonville, bypass all the code in an industrial zone where we put things that blow up, and not have any regulatory control over it other than the state's building code. I just don't think the bill in and of itself from conception was well thought out. But in terms of the just the whole idea that they didn't grandfather. So they sunset the bill, but they didn't grandfather the structure. And I think anybody in the industry, if they were thinking about it, would recognize right away that was a failure. The other thing is expedited permitting. And this is an example where the state has a tendency to take one thing that works in a community and apply it statewide. So, again, in my prior career at the city of Jacksonville, our process, their process, when they're developing a single-family plat, is it's a 2-step process. There's a preliminary plat process, and then there's the final plat process. In the preliminary plat, when you finish that, everything's done. All the survey markers for all the lots are done, the right-of-way, the easement descriptions are all done for the ponds and everything. It's done. The only thing that's not done is the Mylar that's recorded for the plat and the language that actually deeds the right-of-way over to the city and the easements to the city. But in terms of construction process, it's done. So that worked for us, this whole idea that we'll let you go at your own risk, 50% of the allowed permits, worked for Jacksonville. But I can see that a lot of communities, there are 477 local governments in the state of Florida, they're all unique. So forcing that process on every individual local government in the state just doesn't seem well thought out to me. I do want to talk about what's important in terms of what didn't happen. I'll finish up in 2 minutes. What didn't happen, and my friend from Neptune Beach brought this up, is there weren't any changes to Senate Bill 64. We heard all last year that there was an openness to change it. There was no intent to impact small municipalities, and yet not even a bill was filed. And the thing is, the important part for small utilities like us is, currently the interpretation is that if you generate more than $10 million total revenue, if you're a local government, then you're impacted by this legislation. If you're a small private utility and you generate $9 million, you're not impacted, even though our utility might generate even less than that, but because we generate revenue for other purposes outside of our utility, we're penalized for that. So just to wrap up, it's important that you follow these bills even if they look like they're ridiculous. Because in my experience, both in local government and when I worked at the state, is bad ideas come back, and on the third time, they'll get passed. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have run to 8 o'clock, which is normally when our meeting is over. However, I did want to give the audience an opportunity to ask a few questions, very few. So we might spend about 5 minutes with Q&A. If I can have the city managers and vice mayor come back up here, I'll have the roaming mic. We do have our guidelines for our Q&A session on the screen, so I will not read them to you. Everyone here can read. And if you want to ask a question, if you will raise your hand, I'll bring the mic to you, and then you can ask it so everyone can hear you. Any questions?
I was wondering if in Jacksonville Beach, we could do the same thing to our water tower.
Who wants to answer?
Given that we just repainted our 2 water towers, brand new logo, I'm not sure council would be happy if I told them I wanted to spend more money to repaint them.
Any other questions?
I just wondered a little bit about the deep well injection and what other alternatives might be out there, as well as what are other cities doing, what's Jackson Beach doing, what's Atlantic Beach doing. You know, there's been some concerns about just how the water is moving or not moving.
Yeah, deep well injection is definitely one of the solutions that can be done. For the city of Jacksonville Beach, we're pursuing a little bit of a different strategy. You heard Ricky talk about the fact that Neptune Beach doesn't have a reclaimed water system, therefore it would be very expensive for them to get into that endeavor. We already have a reclaimed water system that serves a lot of our municipal properties in Jacksonville Beach. So we're looking at expanding to some other areas that are owned by us that we can use and take advantage of natural percolation, and a few other options that we're exploring with DEP as well. But that's what we're doing. I'm not sure what Atlantic Beach is doing in their area.
Yeah, so Atlantic Beach is exploring basically participating in JEA. JEA has a big pipe that runs across Longwood, originally to service the base there, and then the base said, "You don't want your service." So the idea is potentially that we can send our reclaimed water through that pipe and then down south to E-Town and places like that that are currently served. The challenge with reclaimed water is we produce a lot more wastewater than currently we're using as reclaimed water. And so even with the city of Jacksonville, it's the same thing there. It's more difficult to get the market demand right now isn't there. So that's part of the challenge with it. I mean, the other option is looking at deep well injection, but as you saw in terms of the numbers, the price of deep well injection is very expensive. Down in the Keys, when I was with the state, they had to do this because of the situation in which their subbase is lime rock. And so they were shallow well injecting it, and what was happening was it was coming out in the state came in and assisted them with helping fund the deep well injection. Honestly, I don't know how a lot of local governments, if you're a small local government, the cost of deep well injection may be cost prohibitive. So honestly, I think for small local governments, the best option is just redefining who has to participate in it, but I don't know at this point if that's a realistic option. I thought it was this session, but I don't know at this time whether or not it is or not.
For those people who want to write the governor and encourage the veto, is there a resource that they can refer to so that they're using the most relevant and compelling language?
Yeah, the newsletter that went out, the Beaches Watch newsletter that went out yesterday, reminding everybody of this meeting, has got talking points in it. Also, I have a website, it's sandygolden.com. If you go, I have all of my prior newsletters there, and if you go and look at the most recent newsletter, I've got the talking points there as well.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you for keeping your questions brief. Let's give a hand for our city manager. Thank you all for participating. Appreciate your information and being so informative here. There was some good news in there, I think. So again, we record our meetings. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. Please follow us on Facebook and or visit our website, beacheswatch.com. Our next meeting again is May 1st. We will have talk about our beach renourishment program, so please put that on your calendar. And one last request for those who are physically able, if you can help us stack the chairs because we're really running past our normal time. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.